Hello, everybody. Today we have a guest who used to be a Stockton Ports player turned Stockton Firefighter. In the studio today, we have Mike. He's going to speak about an important measure that's coming up on the ballot November 5th. It's called Measure In. You may have seen signs around town. Vote yes on Measure In, and then a whole bunch that say vote no. You may have received mail. You're going to be seeing commercials on TV, hear it on the radio. So today we have one of the individuals who is part of the Vote Yes campaign for Measure In. He is part of the Stockton Firefighters Local 456. He's been a firefighter for a long time after playing with the Stockton Ports, and we're going to be addressing a lot of the misinformation that is going on with the Vote No campaign, also who is behind it and what their possible motivations are. So today, Mike, if you could please introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about you for our audience.
Perfect. Thanks for having me. My name is Mike Pasqualuccio. Originally I'm a native New Yorker. I made my way to the state of California back in 1996 when I got drafted by the Milwaukee Brewers, and I was assigned here to Stockton to play for the Stockton Ports. During that time frame, I had met my wife, who's a Stockton native, and then from then we've been together for 28 years. We're happily married with a 15-year-old daughter. Ironically, my daughter plays travel fast pitch for Club All-Star Fast Pitch, which our home field is Billy Hebert Field, which is my home field when I first got here. So I think that connection is pretty awesome to carry on a little bit of that legacy. And I also assist with coaching that team as well. So that's been a great pleasure of mine. I've been a firefighter here in Stockton for a little over 20 years. I'm a captain. I'm currently assigned to Engine 12, which is on the east side over at Maine and Oro. And I absolutely love being a captain and working out in that district. I've been there for about 4 years, spent the majority of my career working in downtown, so the south part of Stockton has been where I've made my career at, and I absolutely love it. Right now I'm also the executive secretary for our local. With that, I major in workers' comp, health and wellness, as well as peer support. Peer support is something that we've seen come to light with some of the injuries, especially given the fact that Max Fortuna, one of our beloved captains, was shot and killed in 2022. So having a peer support team and assisting our members in a time of crisis is something that I'm very proud of. One of the other things I'm very proud of, back in 2010, I joined the Child Abuse Prevention Council. I was on the board of directors. I spent about 4 years on that board, and that was probably one of the most cherishing things I've ever done. I've always donated to that charity, but getting involved on a hands-on basis and watching that organization grow was something that I'll cherish for the rest of my life, and I'm glad to have spent that time volunteering.
So let's get right into, well, first of all, I want to extend again my condolences for Captain Max Fortuna. Let's get right into Measure In, because this is what you're talking about, including the situation that occurred with Fortuna, is the result of a lot of the challenges that the city of Stockton is facing. I understand that our fire department is one of the busiest, if not the busiest, in the entire nation per capita. And I understand that Measure In is a way to address retention, etc. But if you could, what is Measure In, and what is the purpose why you guys are pushing for Measure In? How does it benefit the community?
Sure, that's a great question. So currently, back in probably going back to the 90s, binding arbitration. So that's what Measure N is all about, is getting binding arbitration back into the city charter. What that allows is for police and fire. So in case everyone's seen the Yes on N signs, Stockton Police Association and Stockton Firefighters Local 456 teamed up together. So this is a joint effort. We're joined at the hip. We are in unity as one. I mean, we've been that way for probably about the past 15 years. I think that's something that's an anomaly, because if you go to a lot of major cities, police and fire always have a little bit of rivalry, but not in this city. In this city, we are joined together. So the two of us teamed up. What binding arbitration basically does is when we have any sort of contract disputes, any operational needs, anything we can do to address recruitment and retention, if the city and the bargaining units do not come to any sort of agreement, both parties go to what's called mediation. If mediation fails, we go to what's called a third-party neutral arbitrator. So the city gets to pick an arbitrator, the fire department gets to pick an arbitrator, and we usually wind up with one in the middle. And with that neutral third party has no allegiance to fire, police, or the city. They look at the facts presented to them, they identify everything, they also make fiscally sound decisions to make sure that they aren't going to put the city in a negative light, and they'll approve or disapprove what the disputes are. And what happens after that, that result is binding. So case in point is for us as firefighters, when we had binding arbitration, we've never used it. It was used 0 times, but it gave us an opportunity to sit at the table and also come to meaningful negotiations. The biggest thing I want to address with Yes on N, this is a 0 cost item. Taxes will not go up. This is a no cost item. You will not see your taxes increase. So please make sure when you get your ballots, read the language, and you'll see in it that is not, there's no quarter cent, half cent, 3/4 cent. There is 0 tax hikes. So with that said, we lost retiree health care back when the city went bankrupt. Well, for us as recruitment, it was hard for us because we were losing a lot of members. We had 37 members laid off after that. We closed fire stations. We had members going over the hill towards the Bay Area for looking for greener pastures. And it was hard because this is one of the best departments around. We are the busiest 12 station department within the United States. Per capita, we are busier than anybody in the state of California. We wanted to find a way to add to keeping these members recruited and retention. So we went out and sought out Retiree Health Trust. And this was another 0 cost item to the city. 2014, we presented it to the city and they said, nope, we're not going to do it. And all we needed is because due to IRS codes, you had to have approval from your employer. And we just asked the city, can we please put this in our contract? They said no. It took us 9 years. Something that the city did not have to pay for, but this gives us the opportunity to give our members retiree health care paid for out of our pocket with 0 cost to the taxpayers. On top of that, that's also an opportunity for the city to put it on their recruitment flyer that we have a retiree health trust. So that can set us apart from a lot of the other cities. So basically, in a nutshell, binding arbitration is just the opportunity for both parties to meet and confer and come to a meaningful negotiation. And despite what you've heard in the yes and no's, there is no tax hikes. I promise you, and read the language for yourself, you will not see taxes raised. And what this really will do is stop the hemorrhaging, stop the loss of police officers. They are losing members left and right, and we don't want to see it because it costs the city a lot of money. It costs you, the taxpayers, a lot of money to train these members and to only see them take this training and the money we've invested in to go somewhere else to another agency and bring that experience. A 2-year firefighter, a 2-year police officer here in the streets of Stockton could be equivalent to a 10 to 20-year firefighter or cop in another agency. So that is a lot of experience at that short amount of time and investment that we're losing. So we're just hoping that you can read through some of the misinformation that's been put out, some of the dishonest information, and support Yes on N.
Part of what you're talking about also is the fact a lot of people may not know public safety agencies, police officers, firefighters are not allowed by law to go on strike, correct?
Correct.
So really the way I understand this, and I used to be a business agent for the Teamsters, and I used to be responsible for taking cases for my members to go to arbitration. And you're exactly right. It's essentially somebody who's acting like a judge without having to go through all of the expensive costs of going to court, etc. And it's somebody who will look at the facts, weigh the facts, and make a decision based on the facts. So the fact that the opposition is trying to introduce this as a tax seems a bit ironic, especially considering Measure A and the failure that's turned out to be over the last 10 years. And what our audience may or may not recall that we've covered a lot of times is that Stockton taxpayers are actually already paying a tax. Measure A is supposed to be funding additional officers, and we have not received those officers that we've been promised over the last 10 years. And many of the analysts are saying it's because of what you're describing. Somebody will come here, work for 2 years, get the training, and then go off to another agency and make a lot more money because there's a lot more perks and there's a lot, less challenges. So do you really see this as being essential to filling the gap where Measure A is falling short with being able to reach the numbers of new police officers that were promised 10 years ago by the city?
Absolutely, because this gives us a seat at the table. As you said, by federal law, police and firefighters are not allowed to go on strike. So we need a meaningful way to sit at the bargaining table and come up with a way to make us competitive. That we're not asking to open up the spigots and give us everything. We're just asking to be competitive, especially being competitive within the San Joaquin County as well. We are the largest and busiest agency in San Joaquin County, both police and fire. So we're just asking to stay within the market range. We're not asking for anything that's out of market. So having that arbitrator there to mediate it and come up with a meaningful decision makes things a lot easier. Right now, you're seeing on the No on End campaign, it says fight tax hikes and police cuts. So honesty and integrity, those are paramount to police and fire. Without honesty and integrity, we can't deliver our services to you, the citizens. You expect us to be honest and you expect us to perform with integrity. How can you go about listening to someone that's putting a message that says fight tax hikes and police cuts? Why would police and fire team up together if this was going to cut their own jobs? That would not make sense. And like I stated earlier in the Yes On campaign pitch, we stated within the language there is 0 tax hikes. So ask yourself, why would a gentleman that's leading the cause, his name's Dean Andall, this is his second crack at going after binding arbitration, he's the one putting this message out. Now ask yourself, why? What does he have to do with it, and why would he mislead you? This is purposely misleading the public. Back in 2010, he was leading a charge called Measure H, which stripped binding arbitration away from firefighters. He said in a letter to the editor that if we do not pass Measure H, this will lead to police cuts, and without certain, the city will go bankrupt. Well, guess what happened after Measure H passed? The city went bankrupt, police got cut, firefighters got cut. He also stated that Measure H, when we had binding arbitration, which we've never used, was also not going to affect response times. Well, it kind of did, because we lost 37 firefighters, we closed 2 fire companies, and we reduced staffing by 33%, while calls increased from 38,000 to 55,000. So to ask yourself, how could that not reduce response times? We had to increase the amount of people we're sending to calls. Structure fires, the response for that had to increase. We depleted half our city on one structure fire, and in a city like Stockton, where we're averaging close to 400 structure fires a day, you can see how the services were cut to the citizens for a short period of time.
Okay, speaking of Dean Andall, who used to be an assembly member representing this area and is a longtime political consultant involved in the politics behind the scenes that happens throughout the 209 in Stockton in particular, what is let's address the opposition. What is the opposition trying to paint this as, and what is the misinformation that they are putting out in an effort to have people not pass Measure N?
Great. So the misinformation really is what their messaging is. The No on Measure N signs state fight tax hikes and police cuts. So one would ask, why would police and fire be teaming up together if police are going to get cut if this measure passes? Again, we go back to the language. The language states this is not a tax hike. So by definition, that is misinformation, and basically it's dishonest. It's dishonest because it's misleading the public that they're going to have new taxes added to them when it states within the ballot measure there is 0 taxes that are going to be measured. Currently, the binding arbitration, what it does is the city uses consultants to negotiate between police, fire, and all the other agencies. These consultants were the ones that were hired when City Manager Bob Dice was here. The one companies that he said he would never work as a consultant after he left the city of Stockton, which he currently does work as a consultant, they're in the city. They are making millions, because the way negotiations work is we'll show up at the negotiating table in November to try to get a deal done quick, early, and that way both parties can put it behind them, but the consultants drag it out. The city council never gets to hear any offers that are brought to them. When we talk to them after the contracts are ratified, like, hey, did you hear about some of the offers we had? Nope, never brought to us. Because the consultant does one thing, they're there to get paid. They've been reaping millions off our taxpayers. This would be another way to get the consultants out of the city, bring negotiations back to human resource, and save the taxpayers money. So there is a cost savings to getting this put into the ballot and into the city charter.
So instead of raising taxes for citizens, really what this sounds like is that this will save residents of Stockton money by actually eliminating the power of these consultants to charge and essentially tax the city residents millions of dollars in consulting, quote unquote, services. Is that what I'm understanding what you're saying?
Absolutely, because if you go back to the pre-bankruptcy and bankruptcy days, these were the consultants that were in the city, and they were the only ones that were making money, while police, fire, and every other member from the city of Stockton was getting cut and gutted. They were the ones still making money. The city manager was the one still making money, Bob Dice. City managers then got a consulting gig with these companies, those law firms that are going up and down the state advocating against this. This is something that most of the large incorporated cities that are chartered cities in the state of California, I think there's between 20 and 30 have this. This is something, like we said earlier, it's never been used. And it doesn't cost the city a thing, but it gives us the opportunity to address crime, to address retention, to address recruitment, and to keep the firefighters. When you as citizens invest in us as police and fire, and you train and pay us to give you guys the best, you want us to stay here for the rest of our career, because by none, if you go around the nation and you mention the Stockton Police Department or the Stockton Fire Department, we are the gold standard in policing and firefighting.
So that's an interesting point you bring up. This is not something that's new, that's a tax increase that's going to break the city as the opposition tries to portray it. But this is actually something that is normal in a lot of other cities in California. How many cities would you say already currently have this model?
I don't have the exact information, but I believe between 20 and 30. And again, we have the opposition stating that if this measure passes, it will lead to bankruptcy. And I'm here to tell you that's not the case. That's not what we're trying to address. We are not, like I stated earlier, we are not here asking you to give us an unbelievable amount of money. We're just asking for fair and we'll let this part out. Just fair and equitable negotiations. Yeah. We're asking. There's times where we're asking for operational zero cost items. Like I mentioned, retiree health trust. This is a zero cost item. That was also a way for the local to help the city recruit and retain. Where we ask for operational issues within our language. We have some language in our MOU that dates back to 1974. It's antiquated. So we're saying, can we get this language removed and changed and updated? We can't get that done. So this is what binding arbitration does. It gives the opportunity for us to put measures within our MOU, same with police, that can work with the fire chief, that can give us the ability to move this place forward and keep members here, not leaving to other agencies.
So back to the opposition, there's been a lot of speculation that this is a well-funded opposition campaign. Why would, if this is something that's going to be helping police officers and firefighters by voting yes on Measure N, why would somebody put so much money behind trying to lie and convince voters not to? There's been a lot of speculation that millionaire developers like Fritz Groupie and others who are part of this Business Builders Industry Association, I believe it's called, the BIA. Why would millionaires from Lodi care about what Stockton police and firefighters are doing in a city and something meant to help them out and help the city out? What would you say, because there is speculation saying that the developers are really fighting this because they don't want to pay taxes for Mallaroo's down the road when they build north of 8 Mile or anywhere else in Stockton, which is going to cause really a shitstorm because there's so much opposition building north of 8 Mile as it is already. But it does speak to, as we often point out, this cabal that runs politics behind the scenes. Why would they put so much money behind fighting this? What would be your response?
That's a great question, and for me to speculate, I think would be dishonest. I don't want to go and speculate and speak for one's motivation or one's desire. The only thing I can speak on is the misinformation and the total blatant dishonesty when the sign says fight tax hikes and police cuts, because that is not the case. Yeah, that's the motivation behind putting that out, I think, shows a lack of integrity. And like I stated earlier, integrity and trust, right? Those are paramount for us. Honesty and integrity. We live by those standards. And I'm not a politician. I'm a firefighter, former athlete, I'm a father, I'm a coach. I just like to go about my daily business. And when you get your name thrown through the mud, as Dean Ondal had done in the past in 2010 with the past measure ballot, it's disheartening. Because I love working for the city. We love working for the city. You go to ask any police officer, any firefighter, working for the city of Stockton is an absolute privilege. Every time we put that uniform on, we're privileged to put it on. There's nothing we demand out of it, and we just love going out in the community and being a part of it, and we just want to make sure that the members that we train and we invest all our time and pass on our knowledge stay here so we can make this place better. We went 8 years from bankruptcy to hiring. So we right now have members working an insane amount of hours because we have mandatory hours. Police have shortage. They have members working way more hours than they're supposed to. So that's taking away a lot of time from our families. It's taking away a lot of pain and anguish. We're seeing things that we shouldn't be seeing because the violence that you're seeing in the city. And this carries a toll. When you hit 20, 25 years on the job and you can go back and look at this, you wonder what's happening. Another thing that binding arbitration can give us is finding ways to fix our workers' comp system to address the mental illness that our members of the PTSI were coming up with, the injuries, the delay in getting surgeries approved and all that. That could be another way for us to address that. So that way we can save the taxpayers money again, because the quicker we get somebody healed, and if we can address that through labor laws from state as well as federal, and maybe add something within our MOUs, we can get people in the seats faster. What that means is that's a savings to the cities. That cuts down on their unfunded liabilities. So we're looking at every different way to make Stockton the gold standard for the entire state of California.
Well, I appreciate you coming in here today, educating myself a little bit more on this measure, educating our audience. One of the most important parts, because it is an election right now, ballots have already hit people's homes for mail-in. How can people support police officers and firefighters in Stockton? How can they vote in support of you? Because it's one thing to say, yes, I support police officers and firefighters, but what is the actual process that you need residents to do? How do they vote to support you?
Great. Well, as everybody knows, the absentee ballots have been mailed out. I just received mine the other day, so when I get home, I'm going to sit down and comb through it and make some educated decisions, and that's all we're asking you to do. Make educated decisions. You have to sift through a lot of the minutia that gets put out there and look for meaningful substance. Like I stated earlier, this is not a tax hike. This is a zero cost item. There's a lot of disinformation on the No On campaign. You will not see taxes raised. We ask you to show up at the ballot box. We ask you to drop your ballots off. You can mail them in, or if you like to do it the old traditional way, just show up and vote in person, which is always a lot of fun when you get to walk out, cast your ballot, and have a nice sticker on your chest. It's one of the best things we can do as American citizens, is get out there and vote. And regardless of who you vote for, we're hoping for a yes on end, but please vote. That's probably the number one message that I'd like to get out to everybody, that this is our ability to make change. And we're hoping you can give us your support by a yes on end and supporting police and fire in our battle.
Well, what I can tell you is I've already filled out my ballot. I've voted yes on Measure In, so
well, thank you for that.
I appreciate you coming in here today to help get the message out, and it is very important, especially when we do have so many challenges in the city of Stockton that need to be reinforced, not further withered down. So that being said, thank you again. Last question: as a former baseball player, who do you think is going to take the World Series this year?
Like I said, I'm a former New Yorker, so the Yankees, hands down.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Please exercise your right to vote, and that's what makes the world turn, especially here in California. If you don't exercise your vote, you don't have a voice. So don't be complaining later on. Participate in the process. Thank you everybody. See you next episode.
Thank you. Take care. And vote, please. Yes on end.